Hey, it's May 4th, and today we're going to be going through First Chronicles chapters 13 through 16. So in chapter 13, we see that David consults with his commanders, the leaders of Israel, concerning a plan to bring the ark of the Lord from Kiriath-jearim into Jerusalem. Now this was the place that the ark ended up after the Philistines had returned it with their peace offering that contained the golden tumors and the mice, and it stayed there for a while. We read about this in 1 Samuel 4 through 8. Well, the plan seemed good to the people, and David said we would need to talk to the Lord about it also. The only problem was they didn't ask God about it. Next, David assembled all the priests and the Levites and all the people for the big moving day. They even placed the ark on a brand new cart, and Uzzah and Ahiah, they were in charge of the cart and transporting it. The only problem with this was that's not how God said it was supposed to be done. You weren't supposed to transport the ark on a cart. Then, as they were driving along, the ox stumbled, and Uzzah reached up to steady the ark and touched it. Well, the only problem with this was you weren't supposed to touch the ark. No one. David actually gets angry with God because he struck down Uzzah. Interesting thing is, Uzzah's name means strength, if you want to pick up on the irony behind all that. Well, David was afraid of God because of what had just happened, so he left the ark at the house of Obed-Edom. Now, just a little side note about Obed-Edom. Now, he's a Levite from one of the sons of Korah that we saw in chapter 6. He's also a prominent figure that is mentioned several places in the scriptures that we'll be reading soon. So keep an eye out for him because he serves as a great example of the many different types of assignments that the Levite might be called upon to perform while he serves in the temple. Well, the ark remained with Obed-Edom for about 3 months, and the Lord blessed him in all that he had. In chapter 14, the king of Tyre supplies David with building materials, with masons, and with carpenters to construct a home for David. Now, there's no mention as to why Hiram, the king of Tyre, did this in these passages here particularly, but one could guess. Tyre is a small kingdom compared with that of its neighbor Israel. Israel had a new king, a successful military man who has unified his nation and is gaining power the longer that he reigns. Most likely, this was purely political, but David sees it as a confirmation from God that he has firmly established him as king over Israel. And now, other kingdoms are recognizing it as well. Now, David takes on more wives, and he has more children, and just as things are going great at home, the Philistines start raiding again. Now, there's 2 major raids David responds to. The first one, David inquired of the Lord if he should go up against them and fight the Philistines, and the Lord said yes. So David defeats them. The second time, David asked the Lord if he should go up, but the Lord says, nope, I want you to wait and go around to the rear of the Philistines and wait until you hear the sound of marching above the trees, then go up. Well, this time, he told David to hold back and not to charge in. The Lord went up to fight the Philistines, and David was to go up and mop up the whole operation, which is exactly what he did. In chapter 15, David's house is completed, and he decides it's time to bring the ark to Jerusalem. So he prepared a place for it to be put under a tent. Now, wait a minute. Isn't the ark supposed to be placed in the Holy of Holies inside the tabernacle? Well, Saul had the tabernacle moved from Shiloh to Gibeah right after the Philistines had destroyed Shiloh and took the ark back with them to Philistia. Now, the ark never returned to the tabernacle. Instead, it would stay in a tent until Solomon finished building the temple. It seems that David learned his lesson from his previous attempt to move the ark. This time, he talks to the heads of the Levite clans. He tells them to consecrate themselves and to bring the ark into the place prepared for it, as God had directed. This would be by the poles that went through the rings, and they were to carry it on their shoulders. David also made sure that Heman, Asaph, and Ethan were to organize the music and sing praises. As the ark came in, David danced and celebrated before the Lord. But when Michal, his wife, she saw him, she was the daughter of Saul, and she despised him for it. Why? Of all of his wives, she had grown up in the house of a king, and this was no way for a king to act in her mind. David apparently had exposed himself naked in front of the household servants, particularly the female servants, and she didn't like this. Michael's way of thinking is this was shameless and vulgar. Her indignation was rewarded with her never giving birth to children. In Chronicles 16, the ark is placed in the new tent, and offerings and sacrifices are offered up to God. David, he appoints certain Levites to serve as priests and to protect the ark. Then he has a song of thanks sung by the choir, which recognizes the wonders of God, his miracles, his judgments, and all the covenant that was made with Israel. And there are things called to be remembered concerning God's provision for his people. Something interesting about the Song of Thanks. The verses 8 through 21 are an exact match to Psalm 105, 1 through 13. Verses 23 and 33, many of the stanzas are pulled from Psalm 96, 1 through 13, and Psalm 145, and several others. It would appear that this Song of Thanks may have been a compilation of a collection of some of David's greatest hits. The ark is now reunited with the nation in a place in the nation's capital. The biggest lesson for me out of all this, it's not to rush ahead of God with your own plans. God is very careful to tell us exactly what he expects of us. David no doubt had good intentions, but good intentions are not. Uzzah was killed. God does not need our good intentions. What he needs is our obedience. Thanks for being part of our Bible reading plan today, and I hope you're getting a lot out of this. So come back tomorrow, and we'll see what else happens. See you later.